This woman posted a video saying she's done dating black men, like she's completely walking away in 2025. The clip actually dropped back in December, and I've said before, I don't go digging around for stuff like this. It just pops up out of nowhere sometimes.
And just dating black men, like, I'm over it. Like, black men just can't get my time no more. I've been dating black men my whole life, and honestly, it has gotten me absolutely nowhere but fucked. Like, it is just BS.
One day you're scrolling, next thing you know, you're watching a whole breakdown you didn't even ask for. So this black female content creator shows up on the timeline and she's talking about this situation. Plus, other videos where non-black women are also claiming they're done dating black men. And look, people say things when emotions are running high, especially online where everything gets amplified fast. But making big, final statements like that in the heat of the moment, that usually comes from frustration more than anything else. Because here's the reality. When people cool off, their perspective can shift. What gets said during anger doesn't always match what someone actually wants long term. You'll hear bold claims in the moment, but later on, the energy changes and suddenly the tone's different. That's just how emotions work sometimes. At the end of the day, saying you're done with an entire group of people is a strong statement, and it doesn't always hold up over time. Feelings pass, situations change, and what someone says today might not be how they feel tomorrow.
Over y'all, I started dating an Asian man out of nowhere. I literally was dating an Asian man for a whole week. We went on dates straight.
A week?
Courting, gentleman, just everything. Older, established. Like, these black men be on the internet flexing like they got it so good. They got it. They swear they got it. The moment you ask them for some money, it's a problem.
She says she dated
type of man, especially black men, will always go where they feel appreciated, no question about it. If that respect isn't there, they're not going to sit around and beg for it. They'll move on and find it somewhere else. That's exactly why there's so much noise when black men decide to date overseas or connect with women from different backgrounds. People get upset because it highlights one simple truth. Options exist. Nobody is stuck in one place anymore. And that realization makes some people uncomfortable. The idea that someone can just leave and be valued somewhere else, that shakes things up fast. Now, she's saying it's gotten her nowhere, but what she's really describing is dealing with situations that never turned into anything serious. That kind of frustration builds up when expectations don't match reality. If someone keeps ending up in casual situations while hoping for something deeper, it's going to create tension and disappointment over time. And when that hits, emotions start talking loud. It turns into blame, into calling out patterns, into questioning everything. But at the same time, it also reflects the type of connections being chosen and the outcomes that follow. You also notice how conversations around this topic always bring up different groups of women and their experiences. Some speak positively, some negatively, and some switch up depending on their own situations. And interestingly enough, a lot of the loudest opinions often come from people who have already been involved in those same dynamics they're criticizing. Then you find out something interesting. She was actually married to a black man before. That detail changes the whole tone of what she's saying now, because it shows there's already history there.
That, like, why are you out here flexing, but you can't even give me $1,500 off the rip.
$1,500.
When non-black women come online speaking with that much anger towards black men, it usually comes from past experiences. There's some kind of connection, some kind of situation that didn't go the way they expected, and now it turns into frustration being aired out publicly. It's not random, it's personal. And when things don't work out the way someone hoped, it can turn into strong statements like, "I'm done," even if that feeling doesn't last. Because if you really look at patterns, people often go back to what they were drawn to in the first place. That initial interest doesn't just disappear overnight. It's the same energy when someone loudly announces they're done with a certain type of partner, but later you see them right back in the same situation again. That's why those bold claims don't always land the way they're supposed to. So when I hear someone say they're completely finished with a whole group, I take it with a grain of salt. Because history, patterns, and emotions tell a much more complicated story than just saying, "I'm done online." She said she dated an Asian man for a whole week. A week. That's already sounding questionable. That's barely enough time to even know someone, let alone make big claims about how different things are going. And the way she describes it, it comes off like the situation was more about short-term benefits than anything real. When someone is dealing with financial stress or trying to keep things together, especially around the holidays, that pressure can push people into quick situations that aren't built to last. This was posted around Christmas too, which makes the timing even more interesting. That season brings a lot of expectations, a lot of expenses, and if things aren't lining up financially, frustration can hit hard. And when that pressure builds, it often gets redirected into blame instead of looking at the full picture. Then it turns into calling out a whole group when really it comes down to the kind of situation someone keeps choosing. If the pattern is dealing with people who aren't contributing, not stepping up, or not bringing stability, that's going to lead to the same outcome every time. And that's the part that gets overlooked. It's not just about who someone dates, it's about the standards, the decisions, and what they accept in those situations.
Babe, can I have 1,500? Oh, it's excuse. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna send it soon. Oh, yeah, I got you. Never sends it. Then, something came up.
Because if someone consistently chose partners who were stable, responsible, and actually investing into the relationship, the story being told online would probably sound very different. Saying just avoid broke situations sounds simple, but that's really what this comes down to at the core. If someone keeps dealing with partners who aren't stable or not bringing anything to the table, the outcome is going to repeat itself every time. Then she jumps from saying she was dating black men to suddenly mentioning dating an Asian man, and that shift raises questions. You don't usually hear people make such quick switches and then present it like it's a full solution after just a short experience. It also brings up another point. Why not explore connections within your own background if that's something you value? Because if someone is constantly criticizing one group while not even considering others more aligned with their own culture, it starts to look inconsistent. And the energy in all of this feels more like frustration than clarity. It's loud, it's reactive, and it's pointing outward instead of really breaking down what's been going wrong in these situations. Then there's the biggest question. Where did this $1,500 expectation even come from? That's not a small ask, and bringing that into dating conversations is going to change the dynamic immediately. Because now it's not just about connection, it starts to feel transactional, and that creates a whole different kind of tension. So now the question gets even louder. Why are you asking black men for $1,500 in the first place? That's a serious amount of money, not something people just hand out like it's nothing. And if that's the expectation being set, of course it's going to raise eyebrows. It also makes people wonder, why direct that expectation at one specific group instead of keeping that same energy across the board? If financial support is that important, then the standard should be consistent no matter who you're dealing with. And let's be real, not every man, regardless of background, is in a position to just give away that kind of money casually. People who are financially stable usually move with structure and intention. They're not just handing out large amounts without a real connection, trust, or commitment behind it. That's where the disconnect starts to show. When expectations are high but the situations don't match, frustration builds fast. And instead of adjusting those expectations or choosing better aligned partners, it turns into pointing fingers and making it about an entire group. It also creates this idea that one group should carry a certain responsibility, and that's where things really go off track. Because relationships aren't supposed to work like that. It's not about placing a financial burden on someone just because of who they are. At the end of it all, this comes off more like unrealistic expectations clashing with reality. Saying you're done with a whole group while still holding on to those same expectations doesn't really add up, and people can see right through that. You can tell there's still a strong focus there because making a whole video about it shows it's still on her mind. If you were truly done, there wouldn't be this much energy being put into talking about it publicly. And it brings the question right back. If the decision is to move on, then why not fully shift that attention elsewhere? Why keep circling back and directing all this frustration toward black men instead of focusing on different options or better situations? Because the way this comes off, it doesn't look like detachment. It looks like frustration mixed with expectation. Like there's still something being wanted, but it's not being received the way she expected. Then you see how the narrative builds up online and it starts sounding more exaggerated than realistic. It turns into a story shaped by emotions where everything gets amplified and pushed to the extreme. At that point, it's less about a clear decision and more about a reaction. Saying "I'm done" sounds strong, but when the focus is still this heavy, it raises doubts about whether that decision is actually real or just something said in the moment. But let's be honest, situations can change real fast when attraction comes into play. Someone can say they're completely done, but the moment they meet a person they're genuinely interested in, all those strong statements can fade quickly. That's why making bold public declarations like this can come back around later, because people remember, and if the energy switches up, it creates that awkward moment where actions don't match what was said before. Then people start looking at the bigger picture and asking more questions about the situation. When responsibilities, lifestyle, and expectations all come into play, it adds layers to what's really going on behind the scenes. And when those expectations include things like financial support, it changes how everything is perceived, especially if it feels like those expectations are being placed on one group while the full situation isn't being addressed. The timing of everything also stands out. Posting something like this during the holiday season when emotions and financial pressure are already high can make reactions even more intense. At the end of it, this whole situation feels driven by frustration, mixed expectations, and emotional reactions. Saying you're walking away is one thing, but when the patterns, focus, and energy still point in the same direction, people are going to question how real that decision actually is. This whole situation sounds wild because it points more toward the type of relationships she's been in rather than an entire group of people. If someone keeps dealing with unstable situations, that pattern is going to shape their experience every single time. And then she brings up expenses like car seats costing hundreds of dollars, which adds another layer to the conversation. Because now it's not just about dating, it's about responsibilities, finances, and real-life pressure all mixing together. But even with all that, shifting the blame onto one group doesn't really explain the full situation. It avoids looking at the choices being made and the patterns that keep repeating. There's also the point about how different life circumstances can affect dating options and outcomes. Things like responsibilities, family structure, and expectations all play a role in how relationships move forward. Then she throws in the idea of suddenly switching to a completely different dating preference, and that's where people start raising eyebrows again, because it sounds more like a reaction than a consistent, thought-out decision. At the end of the day, this comes off as frustration mixed with unrealistic expectations and repeated patterns. And when those things collide, it can create statements that sound strong in the moment, but don't always reflect what's actually happening long-term. So now it starts to look like the frustration is tied directly to money. If someone isn't spending the way she expects, suddenly it turns into anger and a whole video gets made about it. That connection is hard to ignore. You can almost picture the moment. An argument happens, emotions are high, and instead of cooling off, the phone comes out and everything gets put online. That kind of reaction usually isn't planned, it's emotional and immediate. And this is part of a bigger conversation people keep having about why some men choose to date internationally. Some say it's about different environments, different expectations, or just wanting a different experience overall. Now, of course, there are all kinds of assumptions thrown around about that topic. People debate what's really happening, what the motivations are, and whether it's genuine or transactional. But here's the key point. If the expectation in a situation is centered heavily around money, it's going to shape how the entire interaction feels, because at that point, it stops feeling natural and starts feeling like an exchange. And that's where the disconnect really shows up. If money becomes the main focus instead of connection, trust, or growth, then the outcome is almost always going to lead to frustration on both sides. And that's the kind of lifestyle being put on display here, and it's raising a lot of questions. Trying to build an image around money, expectations, and attention isn't going to hold up when reality kicks in. Just because someone is dating across cultures doesn't mean there's some automatic financial obligation attached to it. Expecting $1,500 just for being involved with someone and then going public when it doesn't happen, that's where things start to look unreasonable. Especially when you think about it, a lot of people aren't even handing out that kind of money in their own long-term situations. So expecting it in a casual or unclear dynamic, that's a major disconnect right there. At the end of the day, this whole situation comes down to expectations versus reality, and when those two don't match, you get reactions like this. But people are paying attention, and they're questioning the logic behind it all. If you made it this far, make sure you like, subscribe, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this with someone who needs to see it.